Everyone, I'm Shannon Severe, the Vice President of Advocacy at National PTA. Joining me is Jackie Ball, the Director of Government Affairs. We're glad that you're able to join us tonight to talk about National PTA's advocacy efforts. We hope you find this webinar informational and inspiring. This webinar is called PTA Advocacy 101 and is part one of a four-part series leading up to the 2016 PTA Legislative Conference held in Washington, D.C. Before we begin, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie so that she can cover some housekeeping items.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us this evening. We're really excited that you're all here and attending this webinar. We are going to take questions, but they will be at the end of the webinar. However, during the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them in the questions box, and we will answer them at the end. Again, thank you so much. And Shannon, it's over to you.
Thank you. So as we dive into the association's advocacy work and your role in making it successful, it's important that we all understand just how central advocacy is to the mission of the association. PTA's mission statement is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. With this core mission in mind, let's talk about how PTA's advocacy efforts are unique from other organizations and how our collective voice can and should be a key driver of local, state, and national policies to benefit not only your child, but every child. PTA has a long history of being effective advocates for all children and their families. Founded in 1897, PTA is the oldest and largest volunteer child advocacy association in the United States. Since our inception, we have worked side by side with policymakers at every level to improve the lives of our nation's children. For more than 119 years, PTA has been a leading voice in policy decisions that have forever changed the lives of children in America, including the passage of child labor laws, providing nutritious lunches in schools, improvements to the unfair and punitive treatment of children in the justice system, and overall increased education opportunities for all children. PTA volunteers still advocate every day for children and families. Here are pictures from last year's legislative conference. You will hear more about the redesigned 2016 LegCon later in the webinar, but mark your calendars. It's March 9th through 10th in Arlington, Virginia. What sets PTA apart? Yes, we're large. Yes, we're geographically diverse. But what if the voice of Port Jefferson PTA in New York were an independent voice, only advocating to benefit the students within their school and without our interest or concern for non-PTA students and families in their larger district, state, or across the country? That's not to say that the work of local units shouldn't be local. It is, and it should be. But every local unit should understand and appreciate the unique role they play. Implementing programs to improve student outcomes in Port Jefferson is key to their work, but so is using that work to inform communication with the community, partners, and local government to advocate for policies positively affecting the entire school district. And as members of New York State PTA, using that work to make the voice of their membership heard in Albany through statewide advocacy efforts to better the lives of all children in New York. This is the case in every state. What if all 24,000 local units and 54 state congresses had no understanding or appreciation for their contribution to the larger goal of bettering the lives of all children? Where would that get PTA? What meaningful, systemic, and far-reaching changes would we accomplish? Port Jefferson PTA is working to better the lives of children in Port Jefferson, New York State, and across the country as part of the National Association. That's what sets us apart. All individual members, local units, and state congresses contributing to the collective voice of the National Association to influence change and advocate on behalf of all children and families. The power of PTA at all levels rests in the pooled efforts of dedicated members and leaders like you, fighting under the same flag for the same priorities, before Congress, the administration, and all institutions that affect the lives of students and families. That doesn't mean that state legislative or advocacy goals of Oklahoma PTA or any other PTA are going to be identical to those of Vermont, for instance. But what it does mean is that all of PTA is guided by a core set of principles and goals, all of which informs national PTA's public policy positions, and that no state, Congress, or local unit advocates in opposition to national PTA positions. PTA advocates on behalf of every child with a clear, compelling, and unified messaging platform, and that's what makes PTA so powerful. With over 4 million, when over 4 million members speak, decision makers take note. That legacy continues today as PTA fights to ensure educational equity and opportunity for every student through a quality public school system. This is what sets PTA apart from other school parent organizations, our mission and ability to advocate with one voice on behalf of every child. As state, local PTA leaders, it is important that you understand what this mission means for you and your members, a commitment to advocate and make PTA voices heard at the local, state, and federal level. I will now turn it over to Jackie Ball, the Director of Government Affairs at National PTA, to talk about some advocacy basics.
Thank you, Shannon. So let's discuss some of the PTA advocacy basics. National PTA is a 501c3 nonprofit. Under this tax-exempt status, National PTA is allowed to engage in federal lobbying and leads the association's federal advocacy work. Many people often have a negative connotation of the word lobbying or lobbyist, but it should not be seen in that way. In fact, all people have the opportunity to lobby, or what we call advocate, for issues that affect them, their families, and students at all levels of government, and should fully embrace that right wherever possible. All state and local PTAs are independently incorporated 501c3 organizations and are allowed to engage in direct and indirect lobbying as well. All federal legislative, administrative, and regulatory advocacy is conducted under our 501c3 status and is nonpartisan. Although National PTA and state and local affiliates are allowed to lobby, PTAs are not allowed to engage in electioneering. This means PTAs cannot endorse candidates for elective office, give money, or otherwise engage in political campaigns. Additionally, PTA does not lobby for or against state-level policies. National position statements and resolutions can and do guide state-level advocacy by state congresses. National PTA's annual public policy agenda guides our federal advocacy. The annual federal policy agenda uses National PTA position statements and resolutions to develop recommendations for issues before Congress and the administration. It is developed by the Legislative Committee and is approved by the National PTA Board of Directors. We will talk more about our federal public policy agenda later on. The 2016 version of the agenda will be released in February and will be discussed in detail in the third webinar of this series. State PTAs are encouraged to align with National PTA positions. State and local PTAs can use National PTA position statements and resolutions to advocate on state and local matters. However, state PTAs may not contradict national resolutions or position statements. And I'll turn it over back to Shannon.
So what is PTA advocacy? PTA advocacy is ensuring that every child receives a high-quality public education, no matter their race, ethnicity, disability, gender, income, or where they were born. That means families need to be engaged in schools, communities, and all levels of government to protect the rights of children and families. But this is much more than legislation. National PTA advocates for programs that improve the health and well-being of students, such as the Healthy Lifestyles Grant Program, as well as programs that honor schools that incorporate and celebrate family engagement, such as the Schools of Excellence program. National PTA also advocates for standards and curriculum that are rigorous and grade level appropriate to ensure that students are career and college ready. You know, Jackie, we've also had some really great movement across the nation as states engaged on different state and local issues. We just had a wonderful set of states participate in Common Core and advocacy training this weekend in Alexandria. Florida, Colorado, New Jersey, Nevada, West Virginia, and Ohio all attended, and I know they're ready, just like the states that attended the 5 waves before them, to get out there and advocate on behalf of every child. We've got a couple of states that have really moved the needle in terms of data privacy legislation at the state level. So thank you, Maine and Delaware, for all of your efforts in those areas. And we also have states acting on behalf of members at the national level through their submission of resolution statements. California, Massachusetts, Indiana, and Washington State have done a lot of work over the past few years to make sure that we're relevant and that we're tackling important issues. And we've got some great non-traditional outreach happening in the states of Georgia and Texas. Now, this is not all that we're doing across the United States, but it's great to highlight some of the good work that's being done.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shannon.
Absolutely, yeah. So with 4 million members, the power of National PTA and all PTAs is that they affect positive change for all children and families on a large scale. Through basic advocacy efforts, advocates have a unique opportunity to change their district, state, and county for the better. Policymakers listen to their constituents when making a decision for their state and district, and the more constituents that are concerned about an issue often garner more attention to the need for change. Policymakers rely on information from outside sources to determine what the best decision is for their state or district. In order to ensure that their representatives make a good decision, advocates need to be engaged to provide them with that information and have their priorities heard. This is the result of a question asked by the Congressional Management Foundation. This organization studies ways in which advocates in Congress can better communicate to each other. When asked whether a constituent meeting in person has any influence on a member of Congress's decision on a bill, the staff member said that 51% had some influence and 46% said it had a lot of positive influence. 97% of respondents said that it had at least some influence on their boss's decision making. These numbers are similar whether you meet with someone in their Washington office or in their district office.
Shannon, can I just add that this is why coming to DC is so important this March. This March and coming to DC would allow you to amplify your voice and maximize your impact through advocacy on students and families.
I couldn't agree more. And so let's answer the question, why as a PTA member should you be an advocate? PTA members have an expertise unlike many others. You are on the ground level and a subject matter expert when it comes to understanding your community. PTA members know firsthand what students with disabilities, poor students, and minority students experience every day at school. You know what your teachers and school administrators need to be successful and whether to ensure that every child is getting the education they deserved. That personal expertise, in combination with the formal training and opportunity to advocate at the Hill, is what makes the event so special, and we hope that all of you attend. As a PTA member, you are part of an association that is unlike any other. National PTA and your priorities are to work on behalf of all students, families, and schools. You do not have an ulterior motive or hidden agenda. Rather, you know and advocate for what's best for students and families in your community, giving you credibility that many others cannot obtain. You are a trusted agent. Finally, if not you, then who? Who else is going to stand up for the families and students whose voices are rarely heard? Who else is going to stand up for the English language learners, the incarcerated youth, the fine arts programs that are being defunded? As a PTA member, you have the opportunity to make a difference in your schools and communities and to ensure that families and students' voices are heard over the noise.
Here at PTA, our advocacy structure is very collaborative. The structure of PTA is that National PTA has positions based on resolutions, passed by convention delegates, and position statements voted on and approved by the National PTA Board of Directors. National PTA position statements and resolutions are used to develop the annual PTA public policy agenda and can be used by state and local PTAs to guide advocacy agendas at those levels. State Congresses are tasked with sharing with National PTA the public policy agenda with regions, councils, districts, and units. Units will share their advocacy agenda up to the states, and states also share their agendas with National PTA. As we have seen over the last few years, policies and issues continue to generate from the local and state level to the federal level. So it's so imperative that we have this collaborative relationship between National PTA, state PTAs, and region, council, districts, and unit PTAs so that we're constantly sharing important issues and advocacy across all levels at PTA. Let's look at each piece in a little bit more detail, starting with the national level. First, looking at the National PTA Advocacy Structure. All of these individuals here are national based. So we have the national PTA officers, the president-elect, a secretary or treasurer, vice president of advocacy, and vice president of membership. We also have the National PTA Board of Directors, the National PTA Legislative Committee, of which Shannon Severe is our chair, and the National PTA Government Affairs staff. The actions of these groups are as such. They lead the association's federal advocacy activities, provide timely updates and information on federal advocacy to states and members, assist in building advocacy capacity for state and local units. This covers both technical assistance and resources, and also put on the yearly legislative conference that will be held this March in Washington, D.C. We also do trainings throughout the year, such as this webinar, and also presentations at state conventions and meetings throughout the year. Now, in addition, National PTA advocates before Congress and the administration on behalf of federal policies. For example, we regularly meet, with congressional staff and administrative staff to share our positions on important issues affecting students and families across the country. National PTA also develops and disseminates the National PTA Public Policy Agenda on an annual basis. As mentioned earlier, the official 2016 agenda will be released in February. You can find the 2015 version online. Please note that in the Federal Public Policy Agenda, we do not explicitly list endorsements or make mentions of specific pending legislation. This is because provisions of bills can change throughout the course of the process to become law. Instead, we list policies that we support and will endorse legislation based on its current form if it aligns with position statements and resolutions. If that bill changes during the legislative process, National PTA can remove its endorsement. For a list of current legislation PTA supports, visit our Takes Action page at pta.org/Take Action under Bill Watch.
As long as we're talking about taking action, please for you. It's of New York State PTA immediate past president, Dr. Maria Fletcher, who testified before the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Education and the Workforce's Subcommittee on Early Childhood, Elementary, and Secondary Education hearing entitled Exploring State Success in Expanding Parent and Student Options in May of 2012. She, like you, is a servant leader dedicated to advancing the common goals of PTA. In addition to our advocacy efforts, National PTA has implemented other effective programs to achieve its mission. In 1997, National PTA convened different stakeholders whom we represent to develop the National Standards for Family School Partnerships, which for the first time articulated what family engagement should look like at the school level. In 2001, National PTA updated the standards, which now serve as a framework for contemplating, reviewing, structuring, and assessing family engagement. There are 6 standards which are used by schools, PTA, and community leaders nationwide. The first is welcoming all families into the school community. 2, communicating effectively. Standard 3, supporting student success. Standard 4, speaking up for every child. Standard 5, sharing power. And finally, the 6th standard, collaborating with community. These standards, in addition to our position statements and resolutions, all go into the decision-making process on what to advocate for and what national PTA supports and opposes. It also drives our programming. I will now turn it over to Jackie to talk about the federal public policy agenda in detail.
Thank you, Shannon. National PTA advocates for many issues affecting children and families. Let's discuss a little bit more specifically about the National PTA Public Policy Agenda. First and foremost, our goal and our mission is to advocate for equity and opportunity for all children and improve family engagement in schools and communities. As Shannon just mentioned with the national standards, family engagement is at the core of our mission here at National PTA. We try to achieve our goals through a quality education. That means we work and support efforts with the elementary and secondary education, special education, early learning and childhood education, post-secondary access and opportunity, and securing maximum investments in education. We also work to protect the safety and health of all students, including working in areas such as gun safety and violence prevention, juvenile justice and delinquency prevention, and child health and safety, including nutrition, school climate, including bullying prevention. And last but not least, we also work in technology and student data privacy to protect the privacy and safety of student records and information. Let's look a little more specifically at each of these issue areas. I'm sure you've all heard a lot of activity around the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We will have a new law very soon, if not by the time you're all watching this tonight. The elementary and secondary education is the primary federal education law governing K through 12 education. National PTA works hard to ensure robust family engagement provisions within ESEA. I'm pleased to tell you that in the new ESEA, which would be called the Every Student Succeeds Act, there are strong provisions within Title I that support family engagement for Title I schools. Additionally, National PTA and advocates just like you who are watching here tonight secured a huge victory for students and families across the country by ensuring a program within ESEA called the Statewide Family Engagement Centers. This program will help support capacity building and technical assistance for states and school districts to implement evidence-based family engagement strategies. At National PTA, we also work to provide safeguards for equity for children throughout ESEA. We will talk more about this, and you will learn more information about all of the important provisions within ESEA in the coming weeks. The other issue that National PTA engage on, and part of our advocacy work related to every child, is advocating for the needs of children with disabilities through the Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act, IDEA. Our main priorities are ensuring that all students graduate college and career ready, that family engagement remains a fundamental principle of IDEA, and that the rights of children with special needs and their parents are fully protected. This also includes ensuring every student with a disability receives quality instruction from teachers and student support personnel who have at a minimum successfully completed state licensure or certification processes. We also work to ensure the full funding of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. PTA supports the education of our earliest learners. We support federal and state incentives for high-quality childcare and preschool programs for children ages 0 to 5. These programs should be affordable and accessible, coordinated at all levels, developmentally appropriate, characterized by high standards for teaching, training, and health and safety. PTA supports the inclusion of a robust family engagement component into all early childhood education programs. Another priority is increasing access to high-quality public pre-kindergarten for all students to prepare them for successful entry into kindergarten. We also advocate for increased investment in other early childhood programs, including home visiting, Head Start, and Early Head Start. National PTA advocates for every child to have access to opportunities that enable them to reach their full potential. Regardless of race, income, disability, or where they were born, every student has the right of access to a high-quality education to ensure college and career readiness and enable them to compete in a global economy. However, many students and their families face obstacles following high school, either due to a lack of a rigorous coursework, financial circumstances, or limited access to or knowledge of the post-secondary opportunities available to them. National PTA supports ensuring that families and students are well equipped to navigate the post-secondary education landscape to make the best decision possible, including understanding the various post-secondary options available. Everyone knows that education funding is important. National PTA believes that federal investment in quality education is critical to our nation's long-term success. Federal law requires educational equity and opportunity for all children, yet there are limited federal resources that serve all students and families in need of these critical resources. Despite a universal agreement from federal lawmakers on the importance of a high-quality education for all children, federal funding for public education has experienced dramatic cuts over the past several years due to automatic budget cuts known as sequestration. Since fiscal year 2010, discretionary funding for education programs has been cut by almost $4 billion, with the elimination of over 50 education programs. National PTA advocates for the replacement of sequestration, for investments in statewide family engagement centers that are now in the new Every Student Succeeds Act, increased funding for programs authorized under ESEA and now ESSA, especially Title I and other foundational education programs, and last but not least, fully funding IDEA. National PTA believes that in order to reap the benefits of technology, students must have access to digital devices and the broadband necessary to engage in 21st century learning and to personalize educational opportunities for them. Furthermore, we also believe that policies must protect the privacy of student data and ensure families and students have reasonable control over the collection, warehousing, and use of electronic student data. Current federal laws do not contemplate electronic records, online service provider rights and responsibilities, or individual electronic student profiles. Therefore, federal laws must be modernized to better protect students' educational records and their privacy, particularly FERPA and COPA. National PTA is deeply committed to the promotion of privacy and security policies that maintain the confidentiality of sensitive data that students and families provide to educational institutions, as well as the data that is collected while using online products and services. Additionally, National PTA is committed to ensuring that families are informed on the use of technology in schools and knowing their rights to protect their child's information. National PTA has a rich history of advocating for children's health and nutrition. Did you know that the first national hot lunch pilot program was initiated by PTA? We've come a long way since those days, and the needs of our nation's children have changed. National PTA continues to support the implementation of the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. This includes supporting the implementation of federal guidelines for minimum nutrition standards for competitive foods, which means those sold during the school day, but outside of the federally reimbursed school lunch and breakfast programs. National PTA also continues to support improved nutrition standards for meals served as a part of the national school lunch and breakfast programs. And lastly, in terms of school safety and climate, National PTA continues to work to improve and support anti-bullying and prevention efforts. Again, National PTA is committed to ensuring the overall health and well-being of all of our nation's students. And we will have many more issues to cover in this area. This is one of our largest areas at National PTA. And when you watch the third webinar in our series, you can learn more details about all of these issues that we're talking about today. With juvenile justice, since 1889, National PTA has advocated for policies that prevent children and youth from entering the juvenile justice system and protecting those currently in the system. Passed in 1974, the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act encourages states to implement effective juvenile delinquency prevention and intervention programs. The JJDPA requires states to comply with 4 core requirements to ensure a minimum level of safety and equitable treatment of youth who come in contact with the juvenile justice system. National PTA will continue to work with Congress to improve the juvenile justice or juvenile protections in JJDPA, support family and community-based alternatives to incarceration of juveniles, and encourage positive school discipline policies that keep students in school and out of the juvenile justice system. National PTA supports local and state efforts to protect children, youth, and families from gun and other forms of violence. National PTA advocates for providing significant resources and incentives for states and local jurisdictions to create connected communities and positive school climates that keep students healthy and in school. National PTA believes the most effective day-to-day school climate is one that is gun-free, but defers to local collaborative decision-making to allow for the presence of law enforcement deployed in community-oriented policing. National PTA also recognizes the importance of family engagement in the development and implementation of school safety policies and response plans in order to maintain a safe learning environment for all students and families. Now that you know more about National PTA's public policy agenda, what can you do to help children? I'll turn it back over to Shannon to talk more about this. It seems like we may have lost Shannon, so I will talk a little bit about some of the roadblocks to advocacy. You may say to yourself, I don't have the time, energy, or knowledge to advocate, or that you may feel uncomfortable with the idea of lobbying. These roadblocks shouldn't hinder you from speaking up for every child, though. Oftentimes, advocacy efforts don't take a long time or a deep understanding of the intricacies of the legislative process. It can be as simple as making a phone call or sending an email to your representatives expressing your priorities. There are also a lot of resources out there to help you understand the issues and PTA's positions and become more comfortable with the advocacy process. As Shannon mentioned earlier, you are the boots on the ground. You understand these issues and you are experts. You know what children and families are facing each and every day. It is important to remember that these representatives work for us. They want to hear from you, and they want to do what is best for their constituents and communities. If they do not know what is going on at the ground level, they won't be able to support students and families as effectively. There are several national PTA advocacy resources available to you. National PTA has federal policy action alerts. Hopefully you all have received many of those over the last several months as Congress has contemplated the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We also have the PTA Takes Action newsletter, which again, I hope all of you have also received. National PTA also hosts webinars such as this on the public policy agenda and other important issues facing PTAs across the country and members. You also have access to the National PTA Legislative Committee. This email here is to reach out to Shannon Sevier, the Legislative Committee Chair. And then last but not least, you also have access to a government affairs staff, which is Elizabeth Rourke, the Deputy Executive Director for Communications and Government Affairs, Jackie Ball, the Director of Government Affairs, Josh Westfall, the Manager of Government Affairs, and Lindsay Kubatsky, the Coordinator of Government Affairs. If you ever have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us at govaffairs@pta.org. National PTA also helps states build their advocacy capacity in several ways. We provide online resources such as an advocacy toolkit, which has been recently updated, an election year guide, which provides resources and information on how to get engaged in election activities, letters to policymakers from National PTA on our website, important issue briefs and information, and much, much more. Again, states also have access to the National Legislation Committee, and access to government affairs staff. Additionally, states can gain more capacity by attending the National PTA Legislative Conference. And also we support exceptional advocacy throughout the country and in states and local levels with the National Advocacy Awards that are presented at the annual Legislative Conference. And last but not least, there's many national PTA advocacy trainings conducted at national convention and state conventions, in addition to webinars and e-learning courses throughout the year.
Thank you, Jackie. You know, what she just listed is quite a robust program. I'd like all of you to focus on the Advocacy Awards because we do have a deadline coming up of December 19th. Please memorialize the wonderful work that you're doing at the local and state level. If there is a special advocate that deserves recognition, a youth advocate, a council, or a local unit, or even your state, please access the online Advocacy Award nomination materials. You can find them under the Advocacy button, or send me an email and I will send you the links. I'll even help you through the process if there's a part of the process that you don't understand. Part of advocacy is not just converting and coalition building so that we have more people working in concert with us, but it's also celebrating the good work that's already being done. Now let's look at the state structure. Remember that every state is a bit different, but if we discuss this kind of in general terms, it will give you an idea of how it all works. Remember that all of these people listed are state-based, and so are state PTA officers, state PTA boards, state legislative committees, advocacy committees, federal legislative chairs, and state staff. We'll talk a little bit more about the important role of federal legislative chairs, or FLCs, and what they do in terms of PTA's advocacy efforts in a couple of slides. Let's consider actions that these groups take. They serve as the lead on state-level advocacy activities. They provide timely updates and information on federal and state advocacy to local units and membership. They're the lead on mobilizing membership in support of federal and state advocacy. They assist in building advocacy capacity of local units and membership, and they hold an annual convention and maybe even individual leadership trainings. State PTA advocacy. Every state should have a policy platform. States should be communicating priorities to legislators, their governor, and the State Department of Education. Legislative alerts and updates via social media and email are a great way to keep members informed. Many states have capital or legislative days at their state capital. Think about attending the next one in your state. You can find out the dates of each state's advocacy day or legislative days on our National PTA website under the News and Events tab. Let's go back to the concept of the FLC. Every state has a federal legislative chair or an FLC. Your state's FLC, with assistance and guidance from the state president and anyone else designated as focusing on federal advocacy efforts, is responsible for the general understanding of PTA's federal legislative priorities. What do FLCs do? The main goals and roles of the FLC is to build your state's PTA relationship with members of Congress from your state. They also act as a liaison between national PTA and your state. You are, of course, welcome to reach out directly to National PTA Government Affairs staff, but they will likely loop in the FLC to make sure all efforts are coordinated. When National PTA issues a federal advocacy alert, FLCs will coordinate with the state PTA to activate members. How do you find out who your state's FLC is? You can either look on their website, contact your state PTA president, or contact a member of the Government Affairs Department, and we can assist in connecting you to your state's FLC. That being said, here are some some ideas to build advocacy capacity at the state, regional, council, district, and unit level. Highlight policy and position information in newsletters and on your website. Recommend that units take the info and post in their newsletter or on their website too. Communicate the importance of PTA advocacy and membership materials. Consider providing a template that units could use for this as well. Use social media like Facebook to inform members. Retweet national tweets. Forward federal policy action alerts out to members. Offer statewide advocacy training workshops at state convention. Offer district and local board training, and participate in state PTA legislative events. Participate in your day at the Capitol, which you can find on our website under, again, the News and Events tab. What can you do at the local level? Well, you're already doing a lot. Every time that you volunteer, you change the fabric of your community and of your school. You can also take information from state and post it in newsletters. And on the website, you can put an advocacy link on your school website to your state and national PTA resources. You can communicate the importance of PTA advocacy in membership materials. Use information and materials from National PTA. Use social media like Facebook to inform members. List the school board calendar and agenda for members to see school board meetings. Encourage people to come with you. Bring a friend. This is especially critical if discussions are being had that will affect your school. Have PTA board members or members at large to participate in a county-wide committee's task force if the option is given. Make sure that your PTA voice is heard. And always think bigger than just your school. Strive to continue to build capacity within your local unit, but make connections out to the district level as well as to the state level. It's important to stay connected. With so much going on at National PTA, you have to continue to be informed by doing exactly what you're doing tonight, participating in the webinars and trainings that we make available to you. Thank you for giving up your evening so that you can be better informed and so that you can inform the work of your local or state unit. Visit National PTA's homepage and scroll all the way down to find more opportunities to engage. You will see a high-level sitemap that will point you to our programs, tools, and resources. We also have a very robust search function that you can use. I also want you to check out our social media. How many of you are following National PTA? Many times we hear from local leaders, I wish I knew that. Following PTA social media is a great way to keep up with the many new programs and resources we are unveiling in the coming year. This includes local PTA grant and in-kind donation opportunities. Finally, take a look at the very bottom. If you can see it, you'll see Contact Us. When you click on that link, you'll be directed to a page that includes a staff list. You are our members, and our staff are here to serve you. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Shannon. As Shannon said, I hope all of you found tonight's webinar very valuable and informative for your advocacy efforts, and it got you excited about your power as an advocate and what you can do. Would you like to learn more? Well, if you do, I hope that you'll join us March 8th through 10th for our annual legislative conference. The 2016 LegCon will feature new content and trainings to provide PTA advocates with the latest skills to shape public policy. We are also excited to announce that this year's LegCon will include award-winning NBC education correspondent Rahima Ellis, as well as many other impressive guest speakers. For more information about the 2016 LegCon and to view the conference program and events, visit pta.org/LegCon, L-E-G-C-O-N. Attendees at LegCon will get the opportunity to network with fellow advocates, share best practices, honor grassroots champions, as Shannon mentioned earlier, and policy leaders. In addition, you will also learn how to advocate for children and families at all levels of government, build lasting relationships with policymakers, and conduct effective meetings with legislators. We hope that you will join us at this year's LegCon. Registration is now open, and I encourage all of you to sign up as soon as possible to take advantage of this amazing conference. As we mentioned throughout tonight's webinar, this is the first webinar in a series for our upcoming LegCon. To prepare everyone for LegCon, we will be hosting 3 additional webinars in the next 3 months. In January, we will host a webinar on how to schedule Hill meetings so that you can know how to, when you come to DC, how to best schedule meetings with your member of Congress and their staff persons. In February, we will host a webinar on the public policy agenda. This webinar will discuss the release of the 2016 public policy agenda more in depth. And then lastly, leading up the week before LegCon, we will host a webinar on how to have successful Hill meetings and how to successfully navigate Washington, D.C. The titles, dates, and sign-up information for each webinar is on our website. And again, the website is a great place for you to find out additional information, the specific schedule and sessions that we are hosting at LegCon. So please visit pta.org/LegCon. And now with that, we will open it up for any questions. Again, we thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll take our questions, and thank you so much.